Hello, beautiful, beautiful black people. I hope that this day is progressing very, very well for you and all of your wonderful, wonderful black loved ones. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful black people. Beautiful black people. Know this. And I have said this in another audio presentation recently. Every time black folks, people that look like me, have been successful, have advanced, white folks organized, implemented a backlash that destroyed that success that black folks had. There was a reconstruction period after the ending of the Civil War. And that reconstruction period lasted for black folks for about 10 to 11 years. And then, in 1877, when those racist white folks, Mitch McConnell, your ancestors, all of those racist white folks in the Republican Party, these were your ancestors. They got jealous. They got envious because black folks had built so many successful black communities in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Wilmington, North Carolina, in Richmond, Virginia, in Seneca, New York, in Petersburg, Virginia, in Augusta, Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, in Natchitoches, Kansas, just to name a few. There was a fantastic, very successful black community in the state of California also. But every time black folks raised up, built up, became successful, there has always been a white backlash to stop it, to stymie it, or destroy the black success, the black advancement. And they are still doing it today, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters, through their legislative policies, through their police brutality, through their redlining black communities, through their injustices within the housing market and the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration. At the center of any new policies that would transform the wealth gap between black folks and white folks. Do you know that a white household wealth is 10 times greater than a single black household wealth? Still today in July of 2020. The wealth gap is actually worse than it was in the 1960s. The process of creating a racial wealth chasm, which is what racist white folks created. It began with the failure to provide the former slaves with the 40 acres they were promised. You don't remember that, do you, racist white folks? Because you have not been taught that in your whitewashed American history classes. Black folks, the freed slaves, my ancestors, your ancestors, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters, were promised 40 acres and a mule. They never got it. Instead, all of those land grants went to the former slave owners and white folks. Any transformation, changing of the wealth gap must start with reparations. And white folks, racist white folks, as soon as they hear the word reparations, they start to develop this white racist destructive backlash against black folks. Yet, those same descendants of these enslavers, these Civil War traitors, have been given reparations repeatedly. All of the advantages, the land grants, the policies that was developed to advance white folks, to assist them in wealth accumulation, was reparations. White folks have been granted reparations since their birth in all facets of life right here on this plantation called America. White folks have advantages in the economic arena, within law enforcement, within the labor arena. Do you know that the unions, the beginning of unions, was a way to shut black folks out of the high-paying, skilled labor type jobs? Because immediately after the Civil War, white folks didn't know how to do a damn thing. The overwhelming majority of the skilled laborers then was the freed slaves, and they were occupying all of those skilled labor jobs. And then in 1875, the white folks decided, we are going to start unions. That way we can shut these black folks out of these skilled labor jobs. And we can give those jobs to the European immigrants. We can give the land grants and the skilled labor jobs to white folks that did not know how to do those jobs. white folks have always been given reparations. Yet, when you mention reparations to black folks, the 40 acres that my ancestors was promised, the 40 acres that your ancestors was promised, they become disinterested. They will begin to form a backlash against anything that will advance black folks in any way, shape, or form. Black folks never got the payment. The check was never given. They never got the restitution that they were deserved for being enslaved. And it's been 155 years now. That restitution is long overdue, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. Reparations for black folks in the 21st century is an absolute necessity. That's the only way the wealth gap will ever be closed. It would take 228 years for a black family today in July of 2020 to close the wealth gap between themselves and a white family in today's economy. It will never happen. The 40 acres that was promised to my ancestors, to your ancestors, is long overdue. Reparations for black folks is a necessity in the 21st century, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. And white folks will always throw up roadblocks. They will say, well, who is going to get the reparations? It's black folks, black Americans. It is for the theft that your ancestors, the theft of wealth accumulation, the theft of labor, the repeated death of slaves. Your ancestors prevented my ancestors from accumulating wealth. Reparations are not about punishing white folks, which is what white folks will say. These are the same white folks that will immediately say they are not racist. Reparations has nothing to do with punishing white folks. And white folks, white Americans are not the ones that would pay for them. It does not matter if your ancestors engaged in slavery or if you just immigrated here 2 weeks ago. White folks, reparations are a societal obligation. Reparations is a societal Societal. Reparations is a societal obligation. In a nation where our Constitution sanctioned slavery. You get that, racist white folks? Reparations are a societal obligation. In a country where our Constitution sanctioned slavery, Congress passed laws protecting slavery, and our federal government initiated, condoned, and practiced legal racial segregation and discrimination against black folks until about 1/2 century ago. And so it is the federal government that pays stupid, racist white folks. It is the federal government that must pay. Reparations would go to any person, any black person, who has documentation that he or she identified as a black person for at least 10 years before the beginning of any reparations process, and can trace at least one ancestor back to American slavery. That's an easy way to pay, to give black folks the restitution that they were promised. 40 acres, my ancestors was promised. Reparations should include a commitment to enforce existing civil rights prohibitions against housing, against educational and employment discrimination, as well as targeting investments in government-constructed, segregated black communities and the segregated schools that serve a disproportionate number of black children. Reparations must include individual cash payments to the descendants of the enslaved black folks in order to close the wealth gap. That's the only way it will ever be achieved. The technical details are the easy part. The real obstacle that we have never overcome is garnishing the political will, because the political arena are controlled by racist white folks still, right here on this plantation called America in July of 2020. Convincing enough white folks, racist white folks, that the centuries long forced economic disadvantage of black folks should be remedied, and that restitution is owed to black folks who have never had an equal chance to take advantage of the bounty they played, the bounty that played such a significant part in creating. It is amazing how generous this country can be. Each year, Congress allocates money. This year, it's about $5 million to help support Holocaust survivors living in America. In backing the funding measure, this punk-ass white boy Democrat, Richard Neal from Massachusetts, said in 2018 that this country has a responsibility to support the surviving men and women of the Holocaust and their families. Imagine that kind of bullshit. You're willing to support white folks, but you don't want to make restitution to the descendants of the slaves that never got their 40 acres. Congress has refused for 3 decades to pass Bill H.R. 40. It is a bill to simply study the issues of reparations. It is a bill simply to study the issue of reparations. And these white racist bastards in the U.S. Congress will not pass it. There are living victims of racial apartheid and terrorism born in this country, including civil rights activists who lost their homes and jobs fighting to make this country a democracy, who have never received any sort of restitution for what they endured. Soon, like their enslaved ancestors, they will all be dead too. And then we will hear the worn excuse that this country owes no reparations because none of the victims are still alive. That's the kind of stupid white boy logic that you get from these racist ass white officials, politicians, presidents, etc., etc. What they are trying to do, they want to delay and deny. It's called a delay until death tactic. It's the same type of tactic that the Veterans Administration use. They will deny veterans compensation until they die. And then they can say, he or she is no longer alive, therefore no compensation is due. Procrastination does not erase what we are owed, racist white folks. Procrastination does not erase what we are owed, racist white folks. That's what I have on this one. Please go to thethrasherway.libsyn.com.